My name is Lisa. I'm standing in a church, looking at my mother on stage, her smile wide and false as she tells a story that's been a lie for 32 years. She's talking about how my father abandoned us, but I know the truth now. It's like a storm inside me, ready to break free. I've been a hospice nurse for years, working the overnight shift at Rosewood Hospice. I live alone in a small apartment in Denver, Colorado. The walls are thin, and the view from my window is of a busy street. I chose this life, every part of it, because I thought I knew what it meant to be abandoned. When I was 7, I asked my mother where my father was. She was folding laundry, and her hands stopped still. "He left us, baby," she said, her voice breaking. "He didn't want us." I believed her, and that belief shaped my life. I became a hospice nurse because I wanted to be there for people when no one else was, to hold their hands in the dark. Then 3 weeks ago, everything changed. It was a Tuesday night in November, and I was on my shift at the hospice. A new patient had been admitted to room 10C. His name was Henry Miller, a 58-year-old man with terminal lung cancer, transferred from a hospital in Boulder. I walked into his room. He was pale, his body wasted by the disease, but his eyes were sharp. I introduced myself and started to check his vitals. As I leaned over him to adjust his IV, my badge swung forward, and he grabbed it. His grip was surprisingly strong for a dying man. He stared at my last name, Miller, and his eyes filled with tears. "Your mother told me you died in a car accident," he whispered.
My world stopped.
I'd always believed my father was a heartless man who had left us, but this dying stranger was saying something completely different. I stepped back, my mind racing. "Sir, I think you're confused," I said, but my voice wavered. He looked at me intently, his eyes full of pain and longing. "I'm your father, Lisa. I've been looking for you for 32 years. My training told me he could be delirious, but my gut told me otherwise." He pointed to an old leather bag in the corner. "Open it," he said. I hesitated for a moment, then walked over and unzipped the bag. Inside was a manila folder. I opened the folder, and the first thing I saw was a birth certificate. It showed Henry Miller as my father and Grace Thompson as my mother. Below it was a photo of a baby, me, in a pink onesie. I recognized the photo. It was the same one I'd seen in my mother's old photo album. As I turned the pages, I found private investigator receipts dating back to 1995. There were also letters handwritten, each addressed to Dear Lisa. I picked up one of the letters. It was dated June 1995. "Happy 3rd birthday, baby girl. Daddy doesn't know where you are, but I'm looking. I made you a teddy bear today, in case you come home." I sat on the floor of the hospital room, the folder in my lap, my hands shaking. I'd built my whole life on a lie. The man I'd thought was an abandoner had spent 32 years searching for me. I called my friend Lily. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, but she picked up on the second ring. "Lily, I think my patient is my biological father, and I think my mother has been lying to me for 32 years, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Lily was silent for a moment. "You need to find out the truth, Lisa. For yourself." I knew she was right. I looked through the cracked door at Henry, his breathing slow and steady. He had only a few weeks left to live. If I didn't do something, the truth would die with him. The next morning, before my shift ended, I went back to Henry's room. He was awake, his mind clear. I sat down and asked him to tell me what had happened. He took a deep breath. "You were 2. I came home from work, and your mother, and you were gone. Her clothes, your toys, everything was gone. 2 weeks later, a friend of hers called and told me you'd been in a car accident and didn't make it. I called the police, every hospital in the area, but there were no records of the accident. Asked him why he believed it. I was 26, Lisa. I had no money, no resources. Her friends swore it was true, and your mother just disappeared. I tried to find you, though. I hired private investigators, filed missing person reports, but she'd changed her name and moved across the state." He gave me a phone number for an old friend, Mark Harris, a retired lawyer in Boulder.
"Call him.
He has all the documents, all the evidence." I sat in my car in the hospice parking lot and dialed the number. Mark answered on the third ring. His voice was cautious. When I told him who I was, there was a long silence. Then, I heard him start to cry. "You're alive," he said. "Henry has never given up hope." Mark confirmed everything. He still had the files, the private investigator reports, and a letter my mother had written to Henry in 1994. In the letter, she admitted that I was alive and that she was hiding me from him. I drove to my mother's house in the suburbs outside Denver 4 days later. It was a large house with a well, manicured lawn, and a big garage. My stepfather, David, was there along with my mother. Dinner was a quiet affair, with small talk about work and the weather. After dinner, when David went to refill his drink, I turned to my mother. "Mom, what was my real father's full name?" Her fork stopped in mid-air for a split second. "Henry something," she said, setting the fork down. "I don't remember." "Why?" I told her. "His name is Henry Miller, a carpenter from Boulder. He's in my hospice, dying of lung cancer, and he has documents that prove he's my father." My mother's face went pale. "He's a liar," she said. "He was a bad man, and I protected you from him." David came back into the room, looking confused. "Connie, what's going on?" he asked. My mother tried to play it off. "Lisa is being silly. That man is just trying to get attention." But I could see the fear in her eyes. I took out the letter from my purse and showed it to her. "This is your handwriting, Mom. You admitted that I was alive and that you were hiding me from him." She lunged at me. "You don't know what you're talking about," she shouted. David stood up, looking shocked. "Connie, is this true?" he asked. My mother's eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape. "It was for the best," she said. "He was unstable. I had to start a new life for you." I looked at her, my heart breaking. "You stole 32 years from me and from him. He spent his whole life looking for me, and you let him believe I was dead." I grabbed my coat and left. As I drove away, I could see my mother standing on the porch, alone, watching me go. The next day, my supervisor, Karen, called me into her office. "Lisa, your mother called and said you're having an inappropriate relationship with a patient. I have to reassign you from Henry's care." I explained the situation to her, and she understood. "I'll step back from his medical care, but I want to visit him as family," I said. Karen agreed. Lily took over Henry's case. She squeezed my arm and said, "She's trying to keep you from him, but you can't let her." Mark also gave me a phone number for my grandmother, Helen Miller. She was 80 years old and still lived in the house where Henry grew up in Boulder. I called her on my lunch break. When she answered, I could hear the surprise in her voice. "Lisa?"
she said.
"Is it really you?"
She started to cry.
"Your father never stopped looking for you. He kept your nursery just the way it was, hoping you'd come home one day." She told me about all the birthday presents he'd bought for me over the years, still sitting in boxes in the attic. A FedEx envelope arrived at my apartment a few days later. It was from Mark, and it contained more evidence, including a photo of Henry holding me as a baby. I sat on my kitchen floor, looking at the photo, and cried. As Henry's condition worsened, I visited him every day. We talked about his life, about the things he'd built, and about me. He asked me if my mother had treated me well. I thought about it. She'd given me a roof over my head, fed me, and sent me to school, but she'd also kept me in the dark about my real father. "She gave me a life, but not the truth," I said. Henry nodded. "I don't want you to hate her, Lisa." She was scared. "But I want you to know that I was always here, always looking for you." A week later, my mother called me. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the desperation in it. "Lisa, I want to see Henry. I need to explain." I told her. "He already knows why you did it, Mom. You can't change the past." She threatened me, saying she'd tell the hospital I was unfit to be a nurse if I didn't let her see him. I stood my ground. "You don't get to control this anymore, Mom. I'm going to spend the rest of his time with him." The church event was coming up, a tribute to my mother for her community service. She'd invited me, and I decided to go. I knew she was going to tell the same old story about my father abandoning us, and I couldn't let that happen. On the day of the event, I wore a simple black dress and pulled my hair back. I carried the manila folder with me. I knew I might not use it, but I couldn't leave it behind. When I arrived at the church, it was full of people. My mother was on stage, looking beautiful and confident. She started her speech, talking about how she'd raised me alone, how my father had left us when I was a baby. I listened, my blood boiling. When she finished, the pastor asked if anyone wanted to say a few words. I stood up. My mother's smile froze on her face. She thought I was going to thank her. I walked to the stage, my steps echoing in the silent church. I adjusted the microphone and took a deep breath. Mom, you've told this story for 32 years, but tonight, I'm going to tell you the truth. The room went still. I looked at my mother, her face pale and her hands shaking. My father, Henry Miller, did not abandon me. He spent 32 years looking for me, while you lied to me and to him. I told the whole story about the birth certificate, the letters, the private investigator receipts. I showed the letter my mother had written, and the room gasped. My mother tried to interrupt, saying I was confused, that Henry was a con man. But I didn't stop. I looked at her and said, "You stole 32 years from us, but that ends today." I walked off the stage and drove straight to the hospice. When I walked into Henry's room, he was awake. His face lit up when he saw me. "Dad," I said, the word feeling strange on my lips. I just told everyone the truth. His eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Lisa," he said, squeezing my hand. I called my grandmother on video, and when she saw us together, she started to cry. "We found her, Bobby," she said. "After all these years." We stayed like that, the three of us connected by the screen and by the truth. Henry passed away a few days later, peacefully, with me by his side. I moved to Boulder to be with my grandmother. I transferred to the local hospice. Every morning, I sit in Henry's old workshop, surrounded by his tools and his memories. I look at the photo of him holding me as a baby, and I know that I was always loved. My mother and I haven't spoken since the church. I told her that if she wants a relationship with me, it has to start with honesty. I'm still waiting to see if she can do that. I'm Lisa, and I'm Henry Miller's daughter. And I was never, ever abandoned. If you had to choose between a comfortable lie and a painful truth, which would you pick? Type truth or lie in the comments. I want to know. And if this story hit you somewhere deep, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because there are fathers out there right now searching for children they were told are dead, and there are daughters who've spent their whole lives believing a story that was never real. Check the description for more stories like this one. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for listening, and thank you for staying until the end.